Powered by Righteous Media.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 341. I'm your host, Paul Reichoff. And welcome to July 4th weekend. Welcome to Independence Day. Welcome to Independence Day. And even as we celebrate America's birth on this Independence Day, even now, from here on the beach, at barbecues across this country and all across America, even now, it's still a time to stay vigilant. And for our annual Independence Day special episode, I'm coming to you from the beaches of the great state of New York, one of my favorite places in the world. And fittingly, we're going to have a conversation with Republican Congressman Mike Lawler. He's the rare type of Republican that won a congressional district that is majority Democrats. He's been a strong voice in support of Trump. He's been somewhat of a moderate, and he might be running for governor of this state. And coming up, I'm going to talk to him about that, Ukraine, Mamdani's shocking win in the Democratic primary, the New York City mayor's race, and much more. But before we get to that, very quickly, my top topics. This week's main top topic is pretty straightforward. Happy birthday, America. Look, there's a lot going on. There are fires underway. There are fights and disagreements all across this country. But on July 4th, all across this great country of ours, it's still a time to celebrate America in whatever way you see fit. Whether it's coming out to a protest, whether it's going to a baseball game, whether it's going to a parade, whether it's sitting on a beach with your family. Some of you may also be serving overseas right now, or serving as cops, firefighters, and first responders. All across America, Independence Day is a time to celebrate one of the things that makes America great, even now, our independence. This country was founded by people who said hell no to being governed by a king. And now, that spirit of independence, that spirit of fight, that spirit of unity, that spirit of patriotism here in 2025 is more important now than ever before. And so are independence. I call it Independence Day every year because it is the time to remind everybody that George Washington warned us about the evils of the parties. The founders warned us about the dangers of the factions. The two-party duopoly now dominates our political system for the worst. And now is a time to remind people that independents are now the plurality. We are the biggest group of voters in America. And not only that, we are the future of American politics. So wherever you are, celebrate Independence Day. And remember that this country was not founded by Republicans or Democrats. It was founded by Americans, independent Americans. And in the great and hallowed history that is the founding of this great nation, New York holds a special place. New York and the Federal Building near Wall Street is where George Washington was first inaugurated as our very first president of the United States. It's where America's first capital was. It's where critical battles across the Revolution were fought. And New York has been a pivotal place for the holding, defense, and expansion of our democracy. I love all states in America. But there's no state that I love more than my home state, the Empire State of New York. And whether you're from New York or not, you know that New York is again in the crosshairs of our politics, our policy, and our democracy. Of course, Donald Trump is from New York. And now there is the biggest political race in America happening in New York City, where the stage is now finally set that also reveals the partisanship, the dysfunction, and the opportunity of modern American politics. You've got far leftist Mamdani, who represents the left wing, the radical wing of the Democratic Party. Then you've got two failed legacy politicians from the Democratic Party in failed, disastrous Mayor Eric Adams, and now disgraced former Governor Andrew Cuomo. Then you've got a Republican that's equally radical and crazy, Curtis Sliwa, the founder of the Guardian Angels and most known for being a radical radio host over the last couple of decades and running for most public offices across New York. And upstart little-known Jim Walden, the only true independent race, who's fighting all of those monsters, all of the bureaucracies, and all of the corruption, and fighting a very, very uphill battle, trying to represent true independents, and the over 1 million independents that couldn't vote in last week's primary in New York City. So the stage in New York is set, and almost every politician in America has thoughts about it, including our guest in this episode. A man who's been deep in all the fights around immigration, around economics, around foreign policy, around Ukraine, and will likely be running for governor of this state next year against the highly unpopular Democrat, Kathy Hochul. So this time next year, next July 4th, it very well could be Democrat Kathy Hochul against Republican Mike Lawler. Both who will be divisive, both who will try to represent their communities, and both who will fight for the 3.5 million independents all across New York State. So with that in mind, and July 4th upon us, I am very happy to have this conversation with a man who I don't agree with on a lot of issues, but I agree with on others, and will undoubtedly be in the center of the politics of our time and the fight especially for the votes and the trust of independent Americans. So on this July 4th weekend, we have another special episode that gets to the heart of what our democracy is all about and what it might look like in the future. So welcome to my conversation with Republican Congressman Mike Lawler. So welcome to Independence Day 2025. Welcome to Independence Day 2025. Welcome to July 4th. And welcome to Independent Americans, episode 341. Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world, happy Independence Day. And Independence Day, as we like to say around here, we are continuing to be in the middle of all of it, bringing voices from all across the spectrum and people who are right in the middle of the most important issues facing our community, our country, and the world. And I'm very happy to have on the show a man I've been hoping to get on the show for some time, the man who represents the district that I grew up in. The great and powerful Representative Mike Lawler of New York 17th is here on Independent Americans. Welcome, Congressman.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great. We got you, we got AOC. I have the Clintons living in my district, George Soros. So it's
you're putting me in with all them.
I also eclectic mix.
I actually live down the street from Pataki, so
yes.
I grew up next to Peekskill when Pataki was the mayor.
When he was the mayor of Peekskill.
I think he was the first politician I ever met because my grandmother was Hungarian.
Yep.
His family ran a Hungarian market.
Yep.
And I used to remember as a little kid hearing them speak Magyar because they were one of the only Hungarian families around. And then he went on to be mayor and then governor.
Yep, no question. Yeah, I saw him recently. He just celebrated his 80th birthday. So
time flies.
Yep.
Time flies. Well, I appreciate you being here in the midst of all of it. A lot to get into. Would love to get your thoughts on the national security stuff. Would love to talk, obviously, about the New York mayor's race, talk about some of the vets work you've been doing, and especially, what the independent folks, I think, are thinking about and looking for. But, sir, let me start with a question I ask everybody. Where are you and how are you?
Well, right now I'm in my campaign office over in New City. We built a studio last election cycle just because of how many interviews I do, but we're doing well. We're going back to Washington tomorrow for the vote on the reconciliation package, and obviously a lot in there to digest. But we're doing a lot across the district and certainly legislatively right now.
Can we talk just a second about your district? Because I think it's important, right? I mean, your district, you're in kind of Copland over there, right? In like New City, and Suffern, and Nanuet. My cousin's a Port Authority cop. She lives over there. You've got a district that has been kind of purple over the years, right? It's gone blue, it's gone red. Not unlike what Pat Ryan has done for the Democrats upstate a little bit more. You're downstate in a place where Democrats outnumber Republicans, and independents are also very significant. So, can you just give us some insight into why you think your district votes for you? Why do they
Yeah.
like you? Why have you been able to do what a lot of other Republicans haven't been able to do in that district?
Well, it's a very unique district. There's about 80,000 more Democrats than Republicans. I'm one of only three members, along with Brian Fitzpatrick and Don Bacon, Republicans who won a seat that Kamala Harris also won. Joe Biden won my district by 10 points, back in 2020. It leans Democratic for sure. But it is also a district where 50% of households have a cop, a firefighter, or a veteran living in the household. So it speaks to the volume, the levels of service and commitment to our communities, to our country within the district. It's also a district where 50% of adults have a college degree or higher. So it's, highly educated and affluent, but blue collar, working class. 19% of my district is Latino. I have the largest Irish per capita in the country in Pearl River, where I live now. I grew up in Nanuet and then Suffern. So my family's been in Rockland County for over 100 years. And so certainly, understand the community, understand the district very well. But I think, as you alluded to, I mean, it's the land of cops and firefighters. And so that commitment to public safety, that commitment to service, I think is something that has certainly helped propel me in my elections in 2-to-1 Democratic districts.
Yeah, my dad's been a volunteer firefighter in Continental Village for, I think, 40 years. My uncle
Wow.
helped start that volunteer fire department. And I think that is a really important part of the ethos, right? And we
Yep.
also, live between Albany and New York City. You've been outspoken about the mayor's race. So have I. I think it's kind of a Rorschach test for a lot of people. But I also think for us, especially, independents didn't have a vote. They'll have a vote in the general. They'll have a vote in the gubernatorial next year. And I think for independents especially, it's a reflection of how the Democrats are continuing to go far to the left. We see the Republicans going far to the right. And when you look at this landscape, we've had Jim Walden, the independent candidate, on this show. Where do your people go in this? I mean, Curtis, in my view, is not a serious candidate. He's not a formidable candidate. Where do your people go, and who are you going to support in that race?
Well, I think when you look at the dynamics in New York, right, obviously the state has moved further to the left. You have one-party Democratic rule up in Albany, which has given us cashless bail and congestion pricing and, shutting down Indian Point and banning natural gas and, created this dynamic in which we lead the nation in out-migration. We have the highest taxes, the worst business climate in the country. And now you throw into it an avowed socialist who wants to provide free everything. He wants to freeze the rent, and says very clearly he doesn't support capitalism. He's for the BDS movement. He believes that we should arrest foreign leaders that are allies of ours that come to the U.S. because he doesn't agree with them. And so it's this bizarre dynamic. And it speaks volumes to, the choices that, in the Democratic primary certainly were before Democratic primary voters. A former governor who disgraced himself, a current mayor who's a disaster, who had to drop out of the Democratic primary. And then, of course, this motley crew of far left radicals. And so you end up with Zohran Mamdani, who, has a strong personality. He's charismatic. He's young. He's talking about, affordability. He has no way to pay for any of it. But of course, he's talking about it. And, obviously, Curtis has run before. I think Curtis certainly, somebody who's been in the New York City lexicon for decades now and been part of the discussion, especially around public safety and taking on, the mob and others. I think Curtis has a chance by virtue of the fact that you have a multi-candidate field here between Cuomo, Adams, and Zoran. Curtis got about 30% of the vote.
And Walden.
And Curtis got about 30% of the vote in the last election. So we'll see how it shakes out.
So that sounds like an endorsement for Sliwa. Have you formally?
Look, out of these choices, I would support Curtis, and I think part of the reality here is what Curtis needs to do is present his vision. How are you going to fix the city?
Can we talk about that though? I want to drill down on it because here's the no shit. They all sound like bad options to most New Yorkers, right? I mean, Sliwa is not taken seriously. He's run all the time. He's not going to be, I don't think, a viable Republican candidate. There's talk about trying to get him to drop out. I mean, if you lived in the city, I'm sure they'd be asking you to run in his place. I've told Jim Walden his campaign slogan should be very simple: not Mamdani, not Adams, not Cuomo, not Sliwa. I'm the guy you don't hate yet. I mean, at the end of this, the Republican Party looks pretty dysfunctional in New York if this is the best they can do in a city that has elected Republican mayors before. So I'm with you. Like I'm against
the demographics. It's unfortunate in that New York City under Giuliani and Bloomberg, whatever anybody wants to say about them today or think about them, the reality is they fixed that city. From the economic calamity of the 1970s, the crime of the 80s, they got the city back to a place where people wanted to be in New York.
Yep.
And now you have businesses and longtime New York City residents talking about getting the hell out.
Yeah,
and it is precisely because of the quality of life and the cost of living and the cost of doing business. And so to me, whoever taps into that, whoever focuses in on how they're going to fix the city, how they're going to present the alternative to New Yorkers, at least has a fighting chance, because the calamity that is coming if Zoran Mamdani becomes mayor is going to make the 1970s look like patty cake.
I don't disagree with you on any of that, and I'm a big supporter of Bloomberg. I saw what Giuliani was able to do, but the reality is nobody's buying what Curtis Lee was cooking here, and I think most folks would want a viable alternative. So for independents like us, you got Jim Walden by default. He's an independent. He's got integrity. But if I'm a Republican, and I'm not, I wouldn't be too happy with who we're fielding in this race either. It doesn't seem like the Republican Party is serious about fighting for New York City if they're not putting forward a more formidable candidate.
Now look, Curtis is the only one that stepped forward. Nobody else stepped forward.
Isn't that an indictment though? I mean, can't we do better in New York City than this cast of characters?
I think it speaks to, frankly, how far New York City has shifted to the left. And if you look at the demographics of the city from 2009, when Mike Bloomberg was last elected, to today, I mean, there are areas Mike Bloomberg won, like Jackson Heights, that he would get demolished. Mike Bloomberg would. I mean, it's just the demographics have shifted so much. Obviously, you have the rise of socialist candidates in the city council, in the state legislature, and now, obviously, an avowed socialist for mayor who wants to ban billionaires, wants to end capitalism.
Wants to remove us from NATO. Wants to arrest.
Yeah, he's talking about taking control of the means of production. I mean, if that's not a communist ideal, I don't know what is.
So if I were you or any Republican, I'd love to talk about Mamdani all day, right? And I think this is a gift for you guys of the highest order.
Politically, it's a gift, but here's the problem: it's a disaster for New York.
Oh, I agree. I'm with you on that.
That's the fundamental issue here.
But let me ask you to zoom out, right? Because I know you're considering this. We also have a disaster as a governor right now in Kathy Hochul. The Democratic brand nationally is terrible. Here in New York State, it's probably even worse because of people like Hochul and Adams and de Blasio. You're contemplating running, at least that's what you've posted. Folks are asking you to run. You've got something like 3.6 million independents in New York State. I think 26%, which are more than the number of registered Republicans. Young people are registering at a very high rate as independents and unaffiliateds. More and more people want none of the above, especially cops, firefighters, vets who put their country and their community ahead of party. Can you talk to me about how you see that landscape? And I mean, are you going to run or what are you going to do?
So we're coming to a decision point soon. We're looking through the data. I'm not interested in a kamikaze mission. Obviously, I have a very competitive congressional seat that we need to hold, and certainly, I've put in the work to do that. And so we're looking at all of it in totality, and we'll make a decision in short order. But I think what it really boils down to, the way that there is a pathway, is the way that I've won in 2-to-1 Democratic districts 3 times. You have to keep your Republican base. You have to win independents and moderates, and you have to pull 20% of Democrats. And I've done that in every election that I've run in because I talk about the issues that matter, that cut across party line. I'm very blunt and direct about, where I stand on things or why. And at the end of the day, I think people want common sense. They want reasonableness. They want compromise. They want people who, yes, will fight on principle, yes, who will stand up for the issues that they believe in, but ultimately be willing to forge a path to get things done. I'm proud of the fact that I was rated the 4th most bipartisan member of Congress, and that I was rated the #1 most effective freshman member in the 118th. I'm proud of the fact that I passed 11 bills through the House in the 118th, and 6 of them were signed into law by a Democratic president. That doesn't happen just by ranting and raving. That happens by actually doing the hard work of governing, sitting down with people of opposing points of view, and finding area of commonality and compromise. We're not going to agree on everything. As Ed Koch famously said, if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 things, vote for me. If you agree with me on 12 out of 12 things, go have your head examined.
You guys love that line. You guys, I think Mamdani used the same line.
He stole it from me. I've been using it for 3 elections.
I think Mamdani's using it now too. But
is,
let me ask you to zoom out, because you also ran against, you've run this play before, running against somebody like Jamal Bowman, right, who's pretty radical left.
Mondare Jones.
Sorry, Mondare Jordan. You've run that playbook before. Now you can run against AOC, you can run against Mamdani, you can run against Hochul, who is, in my view, a failure and incompetent and weak. You've got some easy targets here to run as a Republican, but have you thought about ever leaving the Republican Party? And we talked about Don Bacon while we were getting ready. He was on the show recently. I wouldn't be surprised if Don Bacon declared his independence from the Republican Party and ran for president as an independent or did something else. You're a blunt guy. Do you not think that this brand and this party, on some levels, especially in New York, is dragging you down?
Well, I think the extremes within both parties obviously have moved each party further to the right or to the left. And I think the vast majority of Americans and New Yorkers find themselves kind of here. And they're looking for somebody who's going to capture that 60% or so of the middle and say, hey, look, we're all New Yorkers. We all care about a few basic things. We want a good paying job to provide for our families. We want a quality education for our kids. We want access to housing and healthcare, and we want to live in a safe neighborhood. That's really what it boils down to. And the rest of these issues, they matter, and we all have our perspectives on it, and you try to find consensus. But if you're willing to really engage on how we address those macro issues, those bigger issues, and how you forge a middle ground, we will be able to get so much done. New York is the greatest state in the country. It has been besieged by horrible leadership. Kathy Hochul is the most feckless, failed, incompetent governor in the country. And it's not even close. And the fact is, it's only getting worse. And you now throw in Zoran, and you will see a mass exodus like we've never seen. So, look, it's not a function of I'm going to leave the Republicans or go to the middle. The fact is, this is who I am and who I've always been. I am a Republican. I believe in many of the principles of the Republican Party and the ideals of the Republican Party. But at the same token, I reflect my district. I reflect the middle in terms of where people are, and I think where most common sense people are. You're not going to agree on everything.
You really reflect what the Republican Party used to be. So let me just ask you, and I know your time is short, to go to an issue that I think right now would probably make Ronald Reagan roll over in his grave, which is the way that Ukraine has been treated in the last few years, especially by, I would argue, both presidents. I don't think that Biden did enough. I think Trump is absolutely out of his mind on some of this stuff. But there is overwhelming support for Ukraine. People understand it's a fight for freedom, especially as we go into our Independence Day here. They're fighting every day for freedom and independence and against tyranny. And I think Ronald Reagan would have been very happy if you could have taken out, a quarter of the Russian military without losing a single American life and created a testing ground for everything we need now to fight all our other enemies. But let me just ask you, the sanctions bill specifically, this feels like the next step. Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal seem to have put it together. Can you tell us, what you think the latest is on that, and if you'll support it?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of this should have been done on the front end. Whether you're talking about secondary sanctions, or you're talking about getting Ukraine the weapons that they needed early on, or allowing them to use it without putting restrictions on it, which is something that Biden did. I think this war, obviously, 3 years in, Ukraine has fought valiantly. I think the concern certainly is the longer it drags on, the more difficult it's going to be to maintain or ultimately push Russia back. And so the objective, I think, of President Trump is to bring it to an end. He said that repeatedly, including during the campaign. My view is very simple, which is Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are not our friends. They're not our allies. They are engaged in an unholy alliance that seeks to undermine and destabilize the U.S., Israel, Europe, and the free world. Ukraine falling would be catastrophic for Europe. I think the president, understandably, has tried to bring Putin to the table to get a negotiation. We also obviously see with the actions taken in Iran, these things are not in a silo.
Right.
Russia stayed out of it. We did, in a prior iteration, they may not have stayed out of it. So we have to be cognizant that all of these things, there is an intersectionality between all of it. It's not just happening in silos. You're trying to manage a tinderbox around the globe that Joe Biden, frankly, left us with the foreign policy that was enacted under his administration. And as chair of the Middle East and North Africa subcommittee, this is something that I've been especially focused on, obviously, the Middle East, but also the situation in Ukraine. My wife is from Moldova. She's from Eastern Europe. Her family lives on the Ukraine border. If Putin were successful in Ukraine, I have no doubt that he would not stop there, that a country like Moldova would fall in about 5 seconds because they don't have the ability to defend themselves. Mm-hmm. And so ensuring Ukraine's sovereignty is critical. I think, obviously, the secondary sanctions are imperative. If Putin is not going to stop, if he is going to persist forward and continue to indiscriminately bomb Ukraine and kill innocent civilians, then I think a more aggressive posture needs to be taken, especially from a sanction standpoint. But it's also, look, the Europeans, stop buying Russian gas. Stop helping fund.
Yeah, you'll get no argument here on that. I think you've been approaching it the right way. I think the question is now, can we actually get a sanctions bill? Can they get it to the floor? Can they get it done?
I think obviously, again, all of these things are interconnected. Yep. And if you see in Syria, for instance, right, you're starting to see real progress there, which is extremely positive. Trust but verify. We want to make sure that in fact, it's not some type of shell game, but I do believe.
And it would be nice if Iranian proxies and resources stop missiling American forces in the region too, right?
No question, especially the Houthis, and the proxies in Iraq. If we're able to bring the temperature down in the Middle East, that I think helps because it really undercuts Russia's ability to prosecute the war. They were relying heavily on drones out of Iran. Obviously, the funding streams coming out of China, the troops out of North Korea. There's a lot of intersectionality here that I think if we're able to bring the temperature down, will also help put pressure on Putin. Yep. But if he does not acquiesce, if he does not come to a real ceasefire and end to this war, then I think the sanctions are going to be imperative to really cripple the Russian economy.
Well, I think if more folks in your party sounded like you and Don Bacon on Ukraine, America would be safer, Ukraine would be better off, and the world would be in a better position. So I stand with you. We're rooting for you on that and have your back on it. I know your team was smart in sharing with me the work you've been doing on veterans. And when folks come home from war, that often gets missed. Folks have not been talking about the downstream effects of what happens during war. I want to ask you a two-part question. Number one, the president has struck Iran and circumvented Congress, right? And Congress has abdicated their responsibility. Again, we haven't had a declaration of war since World War II. This has become the norm, right? And Congress, in my view, of both parties, have abdicated their responsibility to encourage or force the president to have a conversation with them on issues of war. I want to get your thoughts on that specifically, right? Will you and others be a guardrail as the Constitution designed for any president, not just this one in particular? And then when they come home, you've been doing work on PFAS, on suicide, really good work for veterans. Just want to give you a floor to talk about that for a second, because we've got so many vets listening, especially in advance of July 4th.
Well, appreciate that, and certainly appreciate the service of our active duty military and our veterans. Obviously, our Air Force did a phenomenal job in this most recent strike. I thought it was flawlessly executed, and the mission was a success. Obviously, from the standpoint of the way Congress interfaces with the administration when it comes to Article 1 versus Article 2 and declarations of war, I don't think there's any question Congress is responsible for declaring war. But as you alluded to, it hasn't been done since 1942. We've been engaged in Korea and Vietnam. We've had the Gulf War. We've had the Iraq War, Afghanistan War. Obviously, we have had numerous actions taken, under the Obama and Biden administrations. They struck in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, in Pakistan, the operation to kill Osama bin Laden, for instance. So, presidents have obviously relied heavily on Article 2 as well as AUMFs, especially the 01 and 02 AUMFs that are still in effect. One of the things that Congress has talked about is reforming the AUMF process and really, looking at the current AUMFs that are in effect.
Removing the blank check.
Correct, and looking at it and seeing what should be amended, what should be changed, who should be removed, who may need to be added. Obviously, a lot has changed in 20, nearly 25 years. So I think there's consensus that needs to occur. I do think the president was legally justified in his decision to strike at Iran's nuclear facilities under Article 2. I do believe they did abide by the War Powers Resolution. But the fact is, there's no question there can and should be reform. And it's still
a good idea, though, right?
It shouldn't just be.
Isn't it a good idea also, though? I've been saying this a lot. First you get the country and then you send the troops, right? And when you don't have a conversation with Congress, when you don't work to build support, I think that puts our troops in jeopardy for the long term, because you don't know where this is going to go. Yeah. So,
there's a balance to be had here. Obviously, when you're using troops and putting them on the ground, I don't think there's any question Congress needs to be part of the equation. When you are doing targeted strikes, obviously there's a time sensitivity, but there's also a kind of need to know. And unfortunately, Congress leaks like a sieve, and there is concern on some of these issues sometimes that from an operational security standpoint, you have to be careful. And I think most people take it seriously, but I also know there are people that simply because of who the president is, change their position on how they view this from time to time. And I've been consistent in believing that presidents do have the authority under Article 2, but I do believe there needs to be reform in this process. And I do think the AUMFs are something to look at, especially the ones that are currently in effect.
We're over time, Congressman, but I want to get you to the vet stuff.
Yep.
You were working hard on suicide, which I appreciate. We're losing too many of our brothers and sisters every day. It's falling below the radar, I think, too often. You've been working on other health related issues. Yep. I trained at Camp Smith in your district. Spent a lot of time on that mountain and at Camp Smith. Can you talk about just what you want to do here and what you think you can get done in the midst of all this? A Congress that doesn't work together, and even HVAC and SVAC seem to be divided. You think you can get stuff done here?
I do. I think, look, obviously our veterans are paramount to us, and making sure that they have the access and care that they need, especially once they are discharged from active duty. Many of them don't sign up right away or start receiving the benefits that they're entitled to. And we want to make sure that from the moment they leave service, they have access to the level of care that they need, especially when you're dealing with veteran suicide or PTSD, and how we treat that. One of the programs that has been extremely successful in New York is the Joseph P. Dwyer peer-to-peer program. We want to bring that nationwide. We want to make sure that is available to our veterans regardless of where they live, because it is a program that is extremely successful. And really does a lot of invaluable work towards preventing suicide among our veterans, helping them through PTSD. Obviously access to care at our VA hospitals. I have Montrose in my district. Castle Point is just outside of it. Making sure that those facilities stay open, making sure that the clinics that are being set up throughout communities are available, that they have access to it. We work tirelessly to resolve veterans cases, make sure that they have, the care they need, but are getting the benefits they're entitled to, getting reimbursed from the VA administration. And then, of course, there's legislation I have on, for instance, PFAS contamination on military bases, and making sure that veterans and their families who may be impacted by contamination in the drinking water, that they receive the health care that they need related to that. So there's a lot of work ahead of us, but I do think we've made some progress in recent years, but still a lot to do to make sure not only that the care is there, but that our veterans are registered, and that they're actually aware of what they are entitled to from a benefit standpoint. So for any veterans living in my district or any district throughout the country, reach out to your member of Congress. That is our job, is to help assist you with the VA administration. We are happy to do it. I work tirelessly, and my office does, on making sure that we help close out constituent cases, but especially for our veterans.
I appreciate that. My dad uses the Montrose VA, like, I don't know, half the guys in my neighborhood. And you've got my support and the show support on that. Just final question. This will be an easy one. I've spent a lot of 4th of Julys in your district, on the river, Peekskill waterfront, Verplank, any other number of places. Where are you going to be for July 4th, Congressman?
So I'll be in my home community in Pearl River. I've been going to these fireworks since I'm a little kid, in Central Avenue Field. But throughout the Hudson Valley, we have spectacular fireworks, as you said, right on the river. My grandparents used to live up on the mountain on Tweed Boulevard in Nyack, and you could see all the fireworks across the Hudson, and it was pretty cool. So we would do that sometimes. But this is going to be a great 249th birthday, and then next year will be the big one, 250th. So it's going to be a great year ahead as we celebrate America's independence.
Well, I hope we can all celebrate together. Appreciate your leadership. Appreciate you spending so much time here. You're fighting for New York, and it's my favorite place in the world. Inside my favorite place in the world, which is America. And we appreciate you bucking the trend a lot, especially within your party, and taking some hard stands. And you got some interesting fights ahead. So I hope you'll come back and we can go deeper again.
Anytime.
Especially if you launch for governor. 3.6 million independents are going to want to hear from you in this state, and many others around the world. But thank you to you and your team. Wishing you and your family a very happy 4th of July, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Stay vigilant. Yep. July 4th is one of my favorite times of the year because it's a giant birthday party for America. But it's also a time that I remember being deployed overseas in Iraq, a time when I remembered what it was like to be away from my family. So on July 4th especially, I love reconnecting with family and friends, but part of my heart is always with those who can't do the same. Our American troops that are deployed here in the U.S. and around the globe. Our first responders, our cops, our firefighters, our EMTs who are working on July 4th so the rest of us can be safe. So this July 4th, pour a little out for some of them and enjoy yourself. For those of you that are listening to this show on Spotify or any other platform, on this Independence Day weekend, share it far and wide. For those of you on YouTube, please do the same. And if you haven't watched us on YouTube, go check out this episode. You can watch me at the beach right now, and you can see my conversation with Congressman Mike Lawler and all of our recent episodes on video and recent news hits. I've been all over the place on MSNBC, CNN, News Nation, and others, and you can see that and lots of extra content if you go to our YouTube page now. And be sure to go to independentamericans.us where you can join our Patreon community. Big shout out to our patrons. Thank you for supporting this content all year long, and especially on this Independence Day weekend. We've got lots of great guests coming up in the weeks to come. It's going to be a hot summer across America, and we're going to continue to bring the independent content that you know, love, and trust. So on this July 4th weekend, let's celebrate America. Our beautiful, fantastic, often flawed, but unparalleled beauty that is America. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please share it far and wide and invite others to declare their independence. And stay vigilant. And remember, you're not alone in your vigilance. We're all vigilant. And we're all in this together. Just like the very first Americans who created this great country 249 years ago. We're going to keep doing it, busting up the status quo and fueling a new movement. Country over party, people over politics. And keeping it real, especially on Independence Day. I'm your host, Paul Rieckhoff. Thank you for listening. Until next time, down with Hamas, down with Putin, Slava Ukraine. Stay vigilant, America. And happy birthday, America. Happy birthday, you beautiful thing, you. We love you. Happy birthday, America.
Powered by Righteous Media.